From time to time, I like to invite somebody on the show that's going to share with us their entrepreneur journey. If we hear from others who have been down the path before us, maybe it's a help and maybe there are lessons learned that can inform our thinking about what we might want to do next. In this episode, we're going to dive in, take a look at one person's journey.
You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe, and today we are going to explore one entrepreneur's journey and learn some things from his experience. We're going to just talk about life lessons and the journey to become a successful entrepreneur. His name is Paul Halme, and he is a fellow Texan, or at least residing that way. I'm down in the Houston area. He's up in the Fort Worth area. So you can't throw a rock and hit each other, but we're at least in the same state boundaries. Paul, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So as often as my case here, I guess we would call it a tradition. I like to ask my guests to give us a little bit of a backstory on kind of where you came from and how you got to where you are. And if that's the ultimate message we're going to talk about, we'll get into more details later, but give us that rundown real quick.
Oh yeah. I'm not a native Texan, got here 25 years ago. So I grew up in South Dakota, excuse me, and small town up in the north. And then when I graduated college, my best friend was coming down to Texas. He's like, hey, you heard of the UFC? I'm going to go fight in the UFC someday. I'm like, well, that's a crazy, interesting adventure. And then I ended up following along, ended up coming down here. And Texas has been amazing. I said, I've been here for 25 years. Got into jiu-jitsu and MMA with my best friend. And I met some guys through training that were stockbrokers. And this is back in 2001 when the market was on fire and they were hiring everybody. I'm like, oh, that'd be a really cool job. And they're like, well, you have a degree? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, we're hiring basically anybody that's got a degree that can talk to people. I'm like, cool. So I ended up doing that. It was an amazing 6-year journey. Like I tell people, it was the best job I ever had. I really enjoyed it because I came from a family that didn't talk about money. Probably like a lot of people, only thing they talked about money was when they complained about not having enough of it, or how people that had money were evil and that money doesn't grow on trees and all the things you hear growing up. And then got a job as a stockbroker. And I was like, oh my God, there's really money in this world. Like, this is crazy. I talk to people every day. And I'm like, in the beginning, I'm like, man, these people are like the smartest people ever. And then I got to know people and I'm like, man, there's regular people that put money in an account every month and just left it alone. So I learned some really good stuff with that. Fell in love with being a broker, ended up getting married, having 2 kids, basically had everything. And then got the urge to become an entrepreneur by helping my friend with his gym, because he actually made it to the UFC, fought in the UFC, won the Ultimate Fighter 4, Travis Lutter, and went through that whole process. And he needed help with his gym. I'm like, man, I'm pretty good at this. I kind of like doing this entrepreneur thing. It's pretty cool. And he was traveling a bunch. And then when he won the Ultimate Fighter 4, I had to make a big decision. It was like, man, if he wins this title fight, it's going to change his life. It'll change my life. I'm not going to be able to keep doing both things that we're doing. So I made the decision, you know what, hey, if I leave my job on good terms, my license is good for 2 years. I can always come back. So let's go take another gamble. And then that led into entrepreneurship and opening a gym and then getting good at doing that. And then people asking for help running their gym and then help them run their gym. They started making more money. Then they're like, well, what do I do with all this money? I'm like, hey, that's my favorite thing to talk about. Let's talk about finance and investing. So it's been an awesome journey. I tell people it's been crazy. I just hope it keeps going. I'm only 20 years into it, of the funnest part. So
yeah. So how would you describe your actual business endeavors right now? What are you doing? Are you a business coach? Is that what you're doing? Basically?
A little bit of both. I still have a brick and mortar business. Like, I joke around. It's like my baby. It's 19 years now I've had it. So I have an MMA gym where I teach regular people, self-defense, get in shape, just alternatives to regular gym, but helping people with that. And then my main business is consulting for other gym owners and other small businesses. And of course, during 2020, that was a really bad business to be in, because I was consulting for non-essential businesses. And I was like, wow, I really picked a good niche there. So, but that's the main driver right now, is we're rebuilding that. And, and we were talking a little bit before, it's like with leadership and everything, we're rebuilding I tell people it was a blessing in disguise. Yeah, it sucked for 2 years and it took a big hit, but we're building this company coming out of it that it's going to be unreal in another year. Like, I can see it. I was talking to my business partners today about it. It's like, in the past, we would always just chase things like, let's just chase this and make lots of money. Because up until 2019, you could make money easy with a gym. And then after this, we're like, let's build a real team and let's really refine our product and do a better job. And now it's like, we've got this team built now where it's like, wow, this is going to be crazy in the next, the next 1 to 5 years.
Now, in that niche with gym owners, are you do you care what kind of program they're trying to advocate? I mean, there's CrossFits and there's I don't know, yoga and all kinds of things, that are out there under the broad category of gym membership kind of deals.
Yeah, the cool thing with our system, we can plug and play into basically kind of any industry. The problem is everybody has their own lingo and their own feel. So we'll bring in people sometimes from outside the martial arts and MMA world, and they don't jive because they got their lingo, we have ours. So there's literally, I have friends that do the exact same thing I do for health clubs, and another friend that does it for CrossFit gyms, and because it's their world. But my world is like MMA gyms, jiu-jitsu gyms, kickboxing gyms. That's like our specialty. That's our niche. That's where we could take anybody's gym and make it way more successful.
And that, of course, is a whole different brand of training you're going to be doing there than trying to do the CrossFit thing. And I went on an adventure at the ripe old age of 66. I tried to join a CrossFit gym. That wasn't a great idea.
Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. CrossFit's, CrossFit gets, people love it or they hate it. It's like anything. It's so hard. And I thought that's one of the things I have to do. I fight a lot with people want to join my gym because I target an older clientele. I'm 47. So I want guys in their mid to late 30s and 40s that have, good jobs and money. It's like, I've gone down the route of training MMA fighters that are broke 20-year-olds that are just impossible to deal with. But when the guys come in, I got to explain to them, I'm like, you're going to like this a lot. You're going to want to come every day and you're going to get hurt. Your wife's going to get mad at you. It's like, you can't change your whole lifestyle in 1 week. So I'm a big advocate of when you start, come twice a week, see how you feel, don't overdo it, because the human body, it's an amazing machine, but if you redline it too fast, and that's one thing that happens a lot I hear from CrossFit guys is, man, we were going so hard and everything was great. And then I got hurt. It's the most common story I hear all the time.
Yeah. That was basically my story. Of course, I accelerated. I had actually had to go through a broken foot repair, and I entered the gym world probably too soon. The foot probably wasn't really where it needed to be. And I started pounding it and hitting it. And next thing I know, it was, not fully broken again, but pretty much broken again. And, I was done.
Yeah. It's tough. The body is a crazy machine, but you got it when it's broken, it's like, oh boy, it's hard to not do stuff.
So let me ask you, when you get asked to come in and help an owner with kind of turning things around or diving in or going to the next level, however they might describe it to you, what are some of the sort of first steps you get into with them?
And the first thing is getting into their numbers, because that slaps them in the face kind of right away, because it gives them that dose of reality. Because a lot of people in business, they don't want to talk about all the numbers. They don't track the numbers, and if they're not tracking the numbers, because the biggest thing we'll get is people like, well, I'm thinking about hiring you, but I pretty much sign everybody up that comes into my gym, and no one ever quits. And I'm like, really? Let's look at your numbers. And it's like, well, yeah, if you're signing up 5 or 6 people a month, it's because they're coming into your gym trying to sign up. You didn't market them to come in. They looked for you. They found you, and then they don't have good systems for tracking their retention. Like, well, no one ever quits. And I'm like, well, if no one ever quit, you'd have 1,000 members and you have 112 members. And they're like, well, these people, they can't, they turned off their credit cards. I'm like, it's pretty much like quitting, but they keep them in a separate, delinquent file. And I'm like, dude, they're not coming back, unless you work those leads. So that's the biggest thing, is getting people to realize that they have to track their numbers. And I go back to my stockbroker career, is like, treat your business like a publicly traded company. Like, know your numbers. What are your sales? What are your expenses? Are you profitable? Just the basic things like that. Tracking your 4 key numbers that we do for everybody is leads, appointment set, appointment show, and signups. If I can get them to track those 4 numbers, then we can be like, hey, we can diagnose it from a distance and be like, this is where you're missing out at. You need to train your appointment setting team, or you need to train your salespeople. There's a gap here. So when I get them to have real numbers, then it's something that we can actually manipulate and accelerate.
Now, in the kind of gyms you like to work with, are there, I don't know, program upsell kind of deals there, or is it pretty much straight up, there's a membership and it's monthly? And
just like anything. We do the same type of thing. So we'll have like basic membership, like, hey, this is the basic monthly one. come in, see if you like it. And then if they like it, they're like, oh, hey, you're doing really good. Here's this other option. You can upgrade to this program, of course, because everybody knows when you're trying to increase the business, it's either you can get more customers or get the customers you have to buy more often. So we'll do that, but instead of raising the price on them, we'll have a different program they can upgrade to where, hey, you'll get this, this, and this, and you pay a little bit extra, but you get all these benefits. And that way we can keep making the businesses more profitable. And then at the same time, they're turning out a better product for their customers too, because people, as they evolve, need more things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm with you on the idea of knowing the numbers. Inevitably, a guy that gets a great idea for a small business will dive in, and they'll be really good at doing that work, whatever it may be. If it's coaching, teaching, manufacturing, creating, whatever. But it's kind of the old joke, well, I still have checks, I must have money, and that's not the way it works.
It's terrifying. A lot of them are, the thing was we were spoiled going into, the pandemic. Like, people are like, oh, if I'm a little behind, I'll just catch up and do this. But then when like things started getting shut down and cash flow was getting limited, people are like, wow, I really had no idea how weak my business was. And it wasn't ready for this. I mean, nobody was ready for that. But I mean, even like, I had people that were freaking out over the first 2-week closure. I'm like, bro, if you're freaking out over this, I mean, you're not in a good spot. It's like you should be able to withstand a 2-week shutdown. And of course, depending where you live, thank God we're in Texas. We weren't that long, but some other people are listening if they were in other states. I had clients that were shut down for over a year. I'm like,
oh yeah,
it was insane.
Definitely.
It was crazy. It was like, how? And then the government, of course, is like, hey, fill this thing out and you get $12,000. It's like, cool. I just spent $50,000 on rent for a gym I couldn't even open.
Did any of your clients do any kind of major, the word that got real popular is pivot during COVID? Did they?
God, we tried so many things.
Did they? Yeah. Tell us some of those stories.
Oh, it was comical. So we tried, we're like, hey, we're going to pivot, we're going to go online and we're going to do Zoom, and tried that one Zoom session. And I was like, okay, I'm going to literally jump off my roof. And people are like, this sucks. It's because jiu-jitsu and MMA is very hands-on. It's not like a theory thing, like a fitness one. We're like, hey, we can work out. So people were not feeling it. I had some clients that teach, some different kids classes, and they could kind of keep the people. So we pivoted with our clients. We were like, hey, you have to do something because you can't make any money. But if you can save people from quitting, it's like that old saying, it's way cheaper to keep a customer, especially during the pandemic. It was, because it was like every customer you could keep kept everything afloat. So we would do what I would do at my gym, and I had other my clients do, is like, we'd make like a social hour. Like we'd get on Zoom and watch like a jiu-jitsu match or something, like talk about this or that. And then during the week, I'd send out workouts like, hey, we're doing the 50 a day push-ups a day challenge. And then next week it was 100 squats a day, just like random things, but interacting with people. Cause we were lucky. We kept a good amount of our students just because we kept them in the loop of like, hey, we're not going anywhere. We're not closing our doors. They won't let us into our doors. So we're going to do this. And then when things started getting better, then they're like, well, you can't go indoors, you can work out outdoors. We go meet at a park and like have a meetup, and we'd all go work out together, do like conditioning, and just had to pivot like, hey, we're doing this. So because the big thing we'd help clients was you guys had to give your customer hope that we're going to get back to the gym. We're going to get back to training, because nobody knew it was going to happen. So we're like, hey, we're going to do this conditioning. So when we go back to the gym, we all don't get hurt and, gas out and throw up, so, but yeah, it was a huge pivot, but it ended up being a way different pivot than I ever thought. It was more about building community even more.
I like that, because I hadn't thought about that angle of that business, but keeping those people engaged and like you use the word, give them hope that it is going to be okay. I know some of the companies I'm aware of where I am, a couple of my favorite stories real quick. There was a Chinese food place, privately owned, family deal. And of course, they got shut down. You can't go to a restaurant. And they figured out that down here in the Gulf Coast, boiled crawfish is a popular thing. So they started using their kitchen to boil these big old tubs of crawfish, and they would sell them by the bag. And people would pick them up, take out, and take them home. And whatever recipe they had landed on was a huge success. Next thing they knew, they decided, shoot, we're making 3 times the money selling crawfish than we ever did with the Chinese food. So they shut the restaurant and just bought or leased a much smaller kitchen space that did not need to meet the public standard, and so they cut their expenses like in half, and they were making 3 times the revenue, so their margin just went through the roof, and they're happy. I mean, it's
Yeah, and
like,
they're happy. Yeah, that was the thing. You had to make so many adjustments, and then like me being a small business owner, when stuff like that was going on, I made my wife and I would joke around. The only thing we could do is we'd go for like a 5-mile walk every day, and then we'd pick where we were going to go order food from. And it was like, and then trying to support other businesses and posting about it on social media, like, hey, so and so's got this thing or this thing, and it was a crazy time. I mean, I never want to go through it again. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I can remember a little restaurant near me that tried to get through, and when people would at least go out to do pickup, they had a whole thing set up. They had lined up all their tables near the front door to make kind of a alleyway, and with a red counter at the end, and you could phone in orders, and then go by there and pick it up, and that became the gathering place. Everybody was standing in line, It's like all the regulars at this place were meeting each other just in line, picking up their food.
Especially, and that reminded us how much we need human interaction. It's like everyone's like, oh, people are never going back to the office. Like, they're going to go back, because we're not designed to like live in the metaverse. And and it's like, yeah, if that was a taste test of the metaverse, I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, really. And it's interesting you bring that up. I was just on an executive coaching call this morning with a client over in Atlanta, and he was lamenting the trouble with trying to get people back to the office. I'm not yet convinced how that's going to look, even when we're, have almost forgotten about COVID. Not that we ever will, but I think so many people are opting to enjoy staying at home for their work, that the people that do choose to go in the office are finding themselves having to go to you sit in your office or your cubicle or whatever, and you're on Zoom calls. And it's like, why am I here?
Yeah, I mean, what is going on here?
Because nobody else is. So I don't know how long it's going to take for that to get back to normal, but I guess that's a discussion for another day. But tell us a little bit more, some ideas about, as you work with these clients, what are some of the other areas you dig into with them?
We've been doing a lot. It's funny how our company evolves. Is we, in the beginning, we were all about, everybody's like, lead gen, I need more leads, so we try to master Facebook ads and Google ads and everything. Then you realize, man, you don't have a lead problem. You don't know how to set appointments. And when somebody comes in your gym, you're not nice to them. It's like, you're wasting all this money on Facebook and Google ads. You need to actually fix your business. So we went through, as we rebuilt the company out of COVID, is we basically teach these guys, we call it building your business machine. Like, hey, this is how, from A to Z, this is how you build a business. We call it almost like a business in a box. Like, this is how you run your gym. You need to have all these things in places. We give them all the metrics, everything, how to track all those things, and then really focus on, once they get to that point, of how do they bring in more team members to run a more efficient gym. Because like if I'm running my gym 100%, I wasn't doing consulting, I was running my gym by myself. I can, have the gym just packed all day long and doing crazy good. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm working 65 hours a week. I'm physically exhausted, so I can't do this anymore. And then you fall in love with the gym. So we teach these guys, like, it's the hardest thing letting go. And people are listening to this can probably relate, is nobody is going to do as good a job as I am at my gym, because I'm the only one that owns it. They don't own it. You can't expect employees to do 100%. And I can't remember who said it. It was a crazy good example. It was like, you have to learn to accept 70% of your 100%. But then what you do to fix it is you hire 270% people to offset your 100%. And now you're getting more work done, more people signed up, and you're not doing it. People you hire. So I'm like, learning more about teaching people about leverage and learning how to leverage, key employees can be such a valuable thing. But the problem with like gym owners and a lot of small business owners is like, well, I could close 80% of the people that come in, or 85%. And then the average person's doing 70. You're like, well, yeah, but you're a little more invested than they are. They don't look past that. They think everybody should be able to do what they do and love the gym as much as they do, but they're just there because, hey, I'm getting paid to do this, or I'm getting free training for this. And, that's a big thing we try to educate people on, is if you want to get to a higher level where you actually have more money, you can do more things, you've got to hire good people.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a big part of the equation. Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, we're up on a break point here. When we come back from this message, we're going to dive in a little more of the elements and hear a little bit more about your journey to be the entrepreneur that you are today. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
All right, everyone, we're back. You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense. And today I'm talking to Paul Halme. Paul is a business coach and has his own business. He works primarily in the niche of special gyms, the MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, and those kind of special martial art type training centers. We were talking about as a coach going in there to help the business owner. There are things we dive into. We were talking about the people side of things. What else, Paul, do you run into in the people realm when you're talking to these owners?
A lot of times, like a little bit, is they're always hung up on the person, like we talked a little bit before, but them not doing as well as they do, and they're not going to. It's like you can only get so much out of a person because if they wanted to run your gym like you are your gym, they're going to go open their own. So it's like that's a big problem for people is getting them to understand, like, you have to know the numbers, you have to get the people, and then you have to train them to do the thing. And then the hardest part that we see is letting the person go. Like, I'll see people like, well, yeah, so-and-so was doing good. And then, I sit in on all of his sales presentations. I'm like, well, that's awkward for him and for the customer. It's like, they don't want to sit through you over this guy's shoulder, like, oh, no, and interrupting the person. And because they get very driven on like, this is how I do it. And it's like, well, no, you should have a system that anybody can do. It shouldn't just be like, you're this. Yes, I can do things different than my staff because I own the gym and I can make calls on that where they can't. But I can't be over their shoulder all the time. I have to give them space and try to teach people that, like, just to, calm down, look at the numbers, audit the numbers, train them, but leave them alone. Give them some room to learn. That's a big frustration that we deal with a lot with clients.
Right. No, I think that the thing is, what you were saying there, it is about expectations. And if you're the owner and your expectation is they're going to do it exactly like you do, you're probably going to be disappointed on a regular basis. And I would think, especially in the realm of, the work in a gym. And I love the idea, if they're doing it so well, then they'll probably go open their own place.
Oh yeah. Right? We see it all the time.
Yeah. It happens all the time. In the idea of, I was saying while we were in the green room during the break, I was saying, I use a similar model when I work with owners. It's a 4-part, it's 4 P words, people, process, products, and performance. We had talked about performance being knowing the numbers, getting into your P&L and all your cash flow and all those kinds of things. We touched on a little bit about the people, and you also started down the path, Paul, talking about process. So having a scalable, repeatable, reliable process. What do you do for owners that when you get to that part of the business?
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. So we go through and we teach them in our Build Your Business Machine part of our company is like, you have to have these processes. You have to give people something because otherwise they're going to go do their own thing. And like, well, I'm trying it this way. It's like, no, this is how we do this. This is how we give them a walkthrough, and we do training through, online training. So they have like videos they can watch and handouts they can give to their staff. And like, this is how we break it down to the most basic things. Like, if this is how you deal with a lead, this is how you call, then you text, then you follow up, then you email, you give them like different processes to follow. Same thing when somebody comes in, it's like, cause that's a big part is how someone's treated when they come into a business. Cause we come in, if you've never been there, you're everybody's gone to a restaurant or a store, you walk in and nobody greets you. You're like, I don't know if I want to go in this place. So we give them processes for even the most basic things like that. It's like someone has to be greeted in the first, 5 seconds, the minute they hit that door. It's like, be nice. Cause people are, coming into an MMA gym. They're scared. They're like, oh, is this going to beat me up? Is everybody going to be a jerk? And then they walk in and you're like super nice. And they're like, whoa, what's going on? Everybody here is like super nice and cool, so giving them processes, that changes the game completely. Cause all these people we deal with, they don't have any processes. I remember when I was younger, back in the day, I worked for a company that franchised a bunch of GNCs. And I tell clients, like, listen, I had a booklet this thick, and every day I have to open it up and I have to go through the opening procedures and check it off. And then the daytime procedures, check it off, all these things. I said, if you can create to that level at your gym, so like our clients will give them like opening and closing checklists. I mean, the most basic things, because to us, it's basic, but to employees, they're like, yeah, the gym looks good. It's like, well, did you take out all the trash? Well, no, I did yesterday. Well, no, you take out every day. Did you do this? Oh, no, well, it's on the checklist. So the checklist makes it so much easier because they're going to do the bare minimum. That's just how humans are. If it's something they don't own or whatever, they're going to do as little as possible to make as much money as they can.
I've got a client that I've worked with for a number of years. He's been in one of my masterminds, and he went out about a year ago and bought a Mako paint franchise.
Oh, okay. Nice.
It was pre-existing. I mean, it was up and running, but the prior owner wanted to get rid of it. He was tired, and my friend said when he got into it, he realized that, that place needed a whole lot of TLC. And he said, and this was part just his personality, not specifically what the Mako people told him, but what he chose to do. He immediately got the crew to go clean the place up. I mean, mop the floors, clean off the dust off all the shelves, even back in the work bays, which the public didn't really see. He wanted it clean.
Yep.
Because he said, you keep this place clean, that's going to be an indication that we're going to do a nice, sharp job on your vehicle when it comes in here. Because if we can't keep our own place clean, how are we going to deal with your car?
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
And he said it sounded crazy, and the guys that had been working there thought it was crazy, but they complied and got busy. And then they started seeing customers coming in actually talking about it, very specifically saying, oh, this place is neat and orderly, looks organized, it looks efficient. So, and there was a direct connection there between what they hope they're going to get out of their car when it comes out of the shop, and stuff like that means a lot. And I think people overlook that.
Oh, 100%. You got to take care of all the little things. I mean, those all add up. And as a customer, I don't want to go to a dirty place. And it's like, especially I don't want my place to be dirty. So if like my gym, it's one of the things I do too, is I try to keep it super, super clean. So people are like, man, this place is clean and smells good. Do you guys actually work out here? It's like, oh yeah. We just clean it 3 times a day, but it's part of the culture.
Right. No, and that's very offensive. If you've ever been a gym person and you go into a place that smells like dirty sneakers. I mean, it's just nasty. So yeah, what do you see on the horizon for businesses and things as we kind of emerge from this fog that we've called COVID?
Man, I think we're in a weird spot right now because we now we go from COVID to the big R word, the recession word. Are we in one? Are we not in one? And somebody's like, well, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, I went through the one in 2008 and I'll take that over the pandemic any day of the week because I can still sell. And, we're going to see some things. And I guess it's part of the economic cycle, thinning of the herd and stuff like that. Some businesses will go away because they're just not taking care of the things they need to take care of. And then the ones that excel are going to. So like we tell our clients, like, yeah, if things get bad, then you have to do more. You have to market more. You have to sell better. You have to retain better. It's like you have to become a better version of who you've been. So I think the future's super bright. I'm an optimist, especially after going through the last 2 years of all this, just such a negative, just, oh my God, just I want, it's like I want to travel and I want things to go back to normal and everything. But I think once we get through this and things kind of balance out, there's going to be a lot of good opportunity out there for, people that are willing to put in the work.
I agree with you, and I'm generally bent that same way. I'm very much more the optimist than I ever am the pessimist. And I was talking to a couple of my other coaching colleagues this week, and we were just sharing our own notes. What do you think we ought to be telling clients? And I'm with you. I think the companies that are out there, if they have some strength and some resilience in terms of just the financial health of the business, now's the time to double down. It's not the time to cut in half. If you have some kind of marketing budget and advertising budget you're doing, double it. I mean, because the ones around you that are kind of thin and maybe failing already, they're going to cut back.
That's the first thing they're going to cut.
They're going to stop and they're going to fall away and fall back. And if you double up, you're going to dominate your market. You're going to be able to grab market share you never had.
It's going to be amazing. And I was talking to some clients the other day too about people like, well, if I turn off my ads, for a little bit, I'm like, you don't realize that the average in our industry, like it's, was it 6 to 10 touch points for somebody to actually come to the gym? I said, that could be 6 months to a year. This person, I've had people come in from years ago that are like, hey, I've been following you for a couple of years and I opted into your thing and blah, 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 and I want to join. So if you turn your stuff off for 6 months, when you turn it back on in 6 months, you lost that whole 6 month pipeline. And now it's going to take another 6 months to get back to where you should have been. I said, technically you're going to lose a year of leads and traffic and new students. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I was just trying to save $500 a month. I'm like, yeah, you're going to bite your nose off. It's like, don't do it.
Right. And that's the key thing. And, it's one thing to have a business that's been going on for several years. You might have stuff in your expenses that you've not watched real closely. So you might have sort of ballooned up in your expenses, and you can go back through the line items and you can cut stuff out. I had a client, we were talking last week, and she said, I've got this phone service that turns out I get Zoom service in my phone bill as part of my business package. But somewhere along the way, I subscribed to a separate Zoom contract, and that's what I've been using. And now when I figured it out, we really got into it. I can cancel that second Zoom account, save myself $40 a month. And, and I've got the same thing. I've got the same capability. And so she got real religious about going through all her line item expenses to cut out stuff like that. But that wasn't muscle in the business. That was some fat that had gotten, bloated in there. And so, yes, if you own a business, going through a mental and financial exercise like that to cut expenses, that's great. But don't cut the key stuff. Don't cut people. Don't cut your advertising and your outreach and all of that. If there's any way possible, and better still, double down if you can.
Oh yeah, 100. It's going to be a great opportunity for people that want to put in the work and do all the extra things, like you said, to grab more market share than you've ever had before.
Yeah, and we will eventually. The irony in what is traditionally called a recession is we're not seeing the unemployment rate climb up, and it's still hovering. I guess depending on who you talk to, 3 point something, 3.6 was the highest number I've heard. That's nowhere close to recession numbers. I mean,
yeah, it's weird. That's for sure.
We've got a long way to go in the employment game to get there. But again, the point is, if your company is reasonably healthy and all of that happens on the employment front, there's going to be a wave of talent that'll be available that you can pick up if you pay attention and, watch what's going on out there in that market.
Oh yeah. And the scary thing, if you're an employee and you've been slacking for the last few years, the company's going to be looking for an opportunity to cut fat, like you said. So it's like, it's not a time to be slacking, because companies are like, hey, we can trim 10% of our lowest performers and blame it on the recession, even though they don't have to. That's going to be out there too. So it's like, even for employees, you got to step things up now, because I remember going through 2001 as a stockbroker, and it was like, the market's crashing, everything. It's like, I better work twice as hard because I like my job, because I went through a bunch of layoff rounds and survived, but man, it was scary times.
Yeah. Well, I think the people that are paying attention, both owners and employees, they know what they've generally got to do to keep everything going in the right direction.
Yep.
Well, just in general terms, Paul, what else do you typically try to get into when you're talking to these owners about how to accelerate their business?
Man, my favorite one is once we get the systems in place and they start listening, like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm running ads, I'm getting leads, I'm signing people up, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then they're like, what do I do with my money? Then I talk to them like, hey, now is where you really got to look at, like, how do you start building a war chest, some people refer to that, or an emergency account, things like, different opportunities. But the biggest problem I see a lot with a lot of my clients and people in the, the smaller businesses, like, well, I put all my money back into the business. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you need to be doing something else. Like, well, no, my best return, I can get a better return by putting all my money back in the business. And then of course, when the pandemic happened, people are like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I've been telling you for 3 years to open up a savings account and fund it. And they're like, well, I never did because my business was the best return. I'm like, well, now you have no emergency money. So, that's a big thing I talk to clients. It's like, you have to go through and create layers of automations that just take it off your plate. So, like I joke around, like Robinhood, love them or hate them, they changed the game for investing and all these things by their app came in and is like, hey, everything's free now. And then Fidelity and Schwab and Ameritrade were like, are you serious? Oh my God. Then everybody started using the app and they were like, hey, guess what? Everything's free here now too. So I was like, this is pretty cool. So I'll go through and, and help them like look at the thing of like, hey, you need to start, talk to your accountant first, get a tax plan in place and figure out what distributions you can take and start learning to take money out of your business, putting it into a retirement account or if you don't have a 401k IRA, whatever your tax advisor says, your investment advisor says. But you have to start doing something now because you don't want to wake up one day and you're 65 years old and you're like, man, I really need to sell the gym so I can retire. And it's like, it's pretty hard to sell a gym because the gym is centered around the person. And not just you build it. Like we have clients that we've taught them how to build the gym to sell, but it's different when you're in your 40s and you're just like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to ease myself out versus like when you're in your 60s and you're like, I can't teach anymore. I'm old. This sucks. People could smell desperation. So I tell them like, man, you have to, once your business starts growing, you have to start learning how to get money out and build a retirement up.
Yeah. Well, that's true from the owner's standpoint, but it's also true in the whole idea. And I do a lot of this kind of work too with my clients. Somebody says, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm going to go start this company. And I go, well, yippee, that's wonderful. Good for you. What's your end game? Where are you going to take this thing or what? And they go, what are you talking about? And I said, well, one day you're not going to want to do this anymore, or you're not going to be able to do it anymore. And what's your exit plan? Are you building an asset for your kids? Well, that's nice, but are they even going to want to mess with it? And so often these businesses that are built around one person's skill, ability, and talent, they end up not having any resale value. I've got a very good friend my age, actually he's a little older than me. He was a lifelong veterinarian, had this huge veterinary practice, dogs, cats, household pets, and all that. And he decided he was ready to retire and put it up for sale, and he couldn't get any money for it because guess what? He was the business. And yeah, you've got a set of files with a bunch of names on it, but a new buyer, a new doctor is not going to have any of the relationship with those people. And he doesn't know their pet names and can't recognize them when they walk in, all of that stuff that goes with that. And he ended up sadly just pretty much shutting the doors and selling the equipment for salvage value. And that was it.
It's sad. Yeah. Cause you have to have an exit plan. It's like, especially in my world, it's like, cause the gym revolves around me. It's like, I know I can't walk away from the gym. It's like, so what did I do? I started a couple of years ago, like rebranding certain things. Like I took my name off of stuff. So now instead of being like, Paul's Gym, it's Peak Performance. So it's not me. It could be anybody. Eventually I could put a person in place and be like, hey, you're going to be buying the gym over the next, 18 months and I'm going to transition out. But while I'm here, I'm going to introduce you to every single, they already know you because you've been here, but then, I'm going to introduce you to every single person. You're going to have everything dialed in. So there's ways to do it, like you said, but if you don't have a plan and you're just going to try to wing it, yeah, you're going to be basically closing your doors and selling stuff for salvage, which you see a lot of, which is super sad.
It really is sad. And back many, many years ago when I was still in banking, I was in the real estate sector, and I can't tell you how many mortgage companies I dealt with that were, privately held, and they were created by a guy and maybe a guy and his wife, and they were, killing it. I mean, they were multimillionaires on their own, but when they wanted to exit, that was the business. I mean, they're the ones that had all the relationships with the realtors and the title companies and all the other people, and there's no asset to sell.
Yeah.
And you've had this great pipeline, and you better have made a lot of money along the way because you're not going to make it the day you try to, quote, sell the business. It's not going to happen.
No, it's tough.
Yeah. So, well, Paul, this has been great and helpful, I think. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning a little more about what you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. You can reach me on my website, paulhalme.com. Social media, like Instagram, it's way better than Facebook. It's just a happier place. So Instagram.com/PAUL_HALME. I'm always kind of posting stuff on there and kind of talking about different things. anything about me is usually on there.
Great. Well, we'll have all those links in the show notes, everybody, in case you didn't catch it on the fly there. And this is a point I always like to remind people that besides the audio broadcast you're hearing on your favorite streaming channel right now, we do have a YouTube version of this episode over on YouTube channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Just look us up, hop over there, subscribe, join in, leave a comment, give us an idea. I'm always looking for new guests and business people that have a story to share. So let me know if you've got something like that. Would love to hear from you. So Paul, one last time, thank you much, man. It's good talking to you.
That was fun. Thanks, Doug.
You bet. For now, I'm going to say goodbye. Have a great day and see you again soon.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.